WNST. We got Pittsburgh. We washed that out of our hair on Sunday night, and certainly we'll be talking about the awful loss. I mean, just a devastating loss, a loss that truly angered me late into the night on Sunday night. I'm trying to get over that, and no better way to get over that than to beat the Cleveland Browns, but no scarier game, I would think, for the Ravens right now than taking on this sort of wounded 0-13 creature who've had 20 years worth of angst, 20-plus years worth of angst. This guy's had a lot of angst. We've been friends for almost 20 years. He was, at one point, back at the turn of the century at Sporting News Radio in Northbrook, Illinois. He was my Sporting News Radio producer of Nasty Nationwide for a long stretch of time. We have remained friends. He lives in Portland, Oregon, but they get the NFL ticket out there, much to his chagrin, as he follows the Cavaliers and the Indians, who have brought him great pleasure and joy, as well as Ohio State. But then there's the Browns, and that's the little part that Bernard Bokenyi, my former Sporting News radio producer, does not talk about too much. He is a proud Cleveland boy, as his Twitter says. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Bernard Bokenyi. That's spelled Bokenyi. Why? Because I like you, Bernard Bokenyi, and despite the fact that you're a Cleveland Browns fan, hey, what's going on, man? Happy holidays to you, the wife, the animals, the creatures, all the love out there in Portland, Oregon. It's been a little while since I had you on, man. How you doing?
I'm good, Nestor, but I got to tell you, I'm envious of you. The fact that you can get angry about the Ravens' loss this past Sunday, I'm envious of you. What's that like to care enough about your team to actually feel that they should be winning football games? I don't know what that's like. I'm envious.
I have not had that emotion in a long time. I mean, we've won a few Super Bowls around here, as you're well aware, and yes, I've said after both. Well, you were with me, down there in Tampa in 2001 when we won the first one, and of course the New Orleans one. And I remember in 2001 adopting this stance, and I'm going to leave this for all the people. If you're out there listening, you can throw me a note on this or not. I said there is a 5-year sort of pillow period after winning a championship where you're just not allowed to bitch. No matter how bad it gets.
I'm with you.
No matter, the Cavaliers, you're a Cleveland fan, the Indians have been in the world, and you want to get the Indians there. I get that, but there is a 5-year period where you should just, for the next 60 months, just bask in the glow, wear the championship swag, feel good, capture those memories, and just realize you're not supposed to win 5 in a row, right? You're supposed to win 1 every 32 years or thereabout. If you're an Oriole fan, I don't buy into that because it's already been 34 years. But and this was the first time since they won the Super Bowl, since the Billy Cundiff miss the year before, where I really took that elevator ride downstairs, and I had this sort of anger about me as a fan, and that it slipped away a little bit. And, from a Brown standpoint, I guess you are numb to losing at 0-13. I mean, I don't really know how it feels. I mean, I am an Orioles fan, but there is something about this donut, this chance to go 0-16 that would really be troublesome, right? I mean, you guys won a game on Christmas Eve last year. Hugh is now 1-28. They're 4-46 over their last 50 games.
Yeah, you've been reading. I like it.
Yeah, I'm doing the math on all of this, but there is a period where when you win, you don't get mad. I felt that anger the other night, and it's the first time in a long time I felt that, and I don't know what I would be feeling as a Browns fan. I mean, I'm about to enter the dark period of Oriole fandom at this point. I am a Capitals fan as well, so I know pain and I know despair and all that, but there's a different kind of despair of losing in the Stanley Cup playoffs every year in April or May, and just how you're going to do that versus, hey, it's Christmas and we might not win a game again, right?
Well, the anger I have, Nestor, and you can relate to this, very similar to the anger you have to Mr. Peter Angelos, owner of the Baltimore Orioles. I'm at a disdained disgust period right now with the owner of the Cleveland Browns and Jimmy Haslam and the league. What happened this past Sunday with the Browns blowing a 14-point lead at home to a Packers team with no Aaron Rodgers, I don't even care. Deshaun Kaiser threw a bad pass. Clay Matthews III picked it off. The Packers win in overtime. I don't even care. I pounded the table at my local establishment, and, I probably let a few bombs fly that I can't repeat here.
You still go watch all the games, even at 0-12?
I haven't missed a snap this year, Nestor. And I don't know that I've missed a snap since my team was stolen in 1995. And that statement's nothing against you or the city of Baltimore. That's in the past.
You've had 20 years to figure this out, and this group is not figuring it out, whether it was Lerner or any of the coaches, any of the quarterbacks. I mean, you watch them every week. Is there anything getting better? I mean, certainly they're in all of these games, though. These games are winnable.
There's nothing getting better, Ness, and it's for one simple reason, and it's something that most of the Browns media and fan base won't point out. It all has to do with Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Cleveland Browns. Every single failure that we're seeing on the field, in the front office, the 4-46 mark, which you detailed, and is true in the last 50 games, this is all on Jimmy Haslam. And for those who don't know who Jimmy Haslam is, Nestor, if I may for a second, you've given me this platform. Jimmy Haslam is a man who's currently preoccupied with a federal fraud trial in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Jimmy Haslam made his money from operating and inheriting Pilot Flying J from his father back in the 60s. And he bought the Cleveland Browns in 2012 for $1.05 billion. We have come to find that a portion of the money that he had accumulated through his years of running Pilot Flying J, the well-known truck stop magnet around the country and fuel, travel centers, was earned through deceit and stealing nearly $100 million from his customers.
It was only $100 million, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, it's chump change. There's a federal trial going on in Tennessee right now. Evidence was presented 2 weeks ago in which this same Jimmy Haslam, owner of an NFL franchise, was heard on a tape recording of, I believe, 16 Pilot Flying J executives, who 4 of them are on trial right now for fraud, in which Jimmy Haslam's voice was identified as not only being there during this meeting, well aware of the fraud scheme, not doing anything to put a stop to it, and Jimmy Haslam has claimed all along he had nothing to do with this. It's interesting, Nestor, I've gone back and looked at the timeline. This recording that was presented in federal trial 2 weeks ago was recorded right around within weeks of the time Jimmy Haslam was announced as owner of the Cleveland Browns. His subsequent moves in the coming months were to force the city of Cleveland to spend over $200 million to renovate a then 14-year-old facility. You've been there many times before the renovation, since. You know all about that.
I keep hearing about these renovations. I mean, we had this in Baltimore. The experience of going to an NFL game, there's no more money they're going to spend on chairs, televisions, anything, because it's going to get passed on to me anyway in my ticket price. I mean, I know that. I mean,
it is.
It just is. And I don't need a bigger television so that I can not see the Joe Flacco replays of bad things. And it's the game experience and what they're talking about for the game and the problems in the game. I don't know if they have a handle on this anywhere, from Jerry Jones through Goodell all the way down. I don't know that they've really dealt with the kind of adversity in fixing these problems. And Cleveland's been 20 years of adversity, for crying out loud.
It is. And the thought process was, well, we'll force the city of Cleveland to fork over $200 million so we can have bamboo paneling throughout the stadium and nice, glass fixtures and whatnot. And then we can also, what Jimmy Haslam did in subsequent months in this time period, was spit in the face of every single Browns fan by changing the uniforms. Back in 95, Nestor, when we fought for our team, our history, we were fighting for those exact uniforms. It meant something to me to turn on the TV in 1999 and see the same uniforms that Jim Brown and Lou Groza wore, to see the uniforms that Ozzie Newsome and Clay Matthews and Bernie Kosar wore. This past Sunday watching the Packers, that's the same uniform that Bart Starr wore. That Paul Hornung wore. That means something to the Green Bay Packers fan base. And you can relate. Look, your team was stolen in 1983. It's horrible. We did our part. We spent hundreds of millions of dollars building a brand new state-of-the-art stadium. We've spent $200 million more in fixing it and renovating it. And what we have now is an owner who is a crook, who's corrupt, who has spit in the legacy of what we as a city fought for. It's been 22 years, Nestor, since what went down. We now have a team that is 4-46 in the last 50 games. And that is the league upholding their end of the bargain. I don't buy it. That's where my anger is. I can't even get angry anymore at Deshaun Kaiser throwing interceptions. I can't get angry at Greg Williams lining Jabril Peppers up 25 yards off the line of scrimmage. I can't. You guys are going to win easily this weekend. I mean, it'll probably be a 7 to 10-point victory. Flacco, he might throw a pick, 220 yards. It'll be a boring game. But the Ravens are going to walk out of Cleveland with a victory. Congratulations. I'm not going to get mad because I know what's coming, and they're going to go 0-16 this year. They're going to have 2 top, probably 7 draft picks because they own Houston's pick. I know they're going to screw it up. And, John Dorsey, he comes in now as the new general manager. I think he's already finding out that he should have waited for the New York Giants to call him, which they probably would have.
I don't know who takes this gig, right? I mean, through all of this, Pettin wound up with it because he wasn't a coaching candidate anywhere. Hugh Jackson signed up for it, which I found to be shocking. And, talking to some coaches in that circle, they were like, hey, there's only 32 of these jobs. You get offered one, you take one.
No, there's 31, Nestor. Let's be honest. There are only 31 head coaching jobs in the NFL. There are only 31. This crap in Cleveland is not an NFL franchise, and that's where my anger is. I'm tired of saying that there's 32 NFL teams. There are only 31.
For you in watching them this year and in watching the Sashi Brown and this experiment, was there ever a point you bought into the analytics side of football?
No.
Because I'll be honest with you, plenty of people on the football side are buying in to analytics and studying what's happening in baseball and trying to get better at drafting football players, trying to get better at scheme, trying to get better at strengths and weaknesses and tendencies and all of those things that coaches have been studying forever. I didn't think it was so horrible because I'm like, well, you're the Browns. How, it can't get any worse. Well, it can when you almost go 0-16 2 years in a row and you're into late December trying to, wrap yourself around beating the Bears in a week or two or whatever. But you thought it couldn't get any worse. Well, it did. I mean, Pettin had this team on the fringe of being competitive, and all of those players, whether it's Joe Hayden, who I would have seen in Pittsburgh on Sunday night had he been healthy, or Alex Mack, who I see run around with the Atlanta Falcons now. He almost got himself a ring last year, and Joe Thomas is the last sort of man standing, and not even standing at this point, but they've had some good football players through there. I don't know what to make of this current roster. I mean, I look up and down and I see these names of the the Danny Sheltons and the Joel Batonios, and I know they brought Zeitler over, and I know they've drafted some wide receivers. I don't know what to expect through all of this, but at some point, Hugh Jackson's a good football man, a good football coach. You got to get the players, and if you don't have the players, you go 0-13, period, right?
Well, it's got to work in tandem. It's pretty clear. Look, what you guys have in Baltimore, and I really hope that the Ravens fan appreciates Ozzie Newsome. Now, look, I have a soft spot for Ozzie. He's one of the guys that made me be a football fan. I mean, from my youngest days, that number 82, it pains me when I see that on the field these days. I think it's a crime. Ozzie Newsome is the model of what it takes to run an NFL franchise by having consistency and continuity between the front office, the coaching staff, the scouts. Everybody has to be on the same page. What you guys are doing on the field, and I know this past Sunday's loss to Pittsburgh was frustrating, you have an identity of a defense, of a tough-minded football team that's going to run the football. You guys are never going to win by 30 points. Joe Flacco's never going to throw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's not what your team is. But it's because of Ozzie Newsome that you guys have an identity. What is not happening in Cleveland is just that. And it's all because of ownership. Look, this analytics thing, Sashi Brown, his legacy, not only did he pass and not draft Carson Wentz and Deshaun Watson, Nestor, he traded them both away. That's what Sashi Brown and these nerds from Harvard and the analytics approach and the control gave you, is trading away Carson Wentz, who unfortunately, with the injury this past Sunday, still a leading MVP candidate. Deshaun Watson's season ended soon this year, but we've seen in them, those guys are good young quarterbacks. The Eagles and the Texans are set for 10 years plus because they have their quarterback. Sashi Brown traded them both away. That's his legacy. That is why the Cleveland Browns are 0-13 right now. And it's also because you have a head coach in Hugh Jackson who has been very questionable But again, I can't get angry about Sashi Brown's ineptitude or Hugh Jackson's bad play calling. I can only get angry at Jimmy Haslam, the owner of the Cleveland Browns, who is responsible for all of it.
Well, see, I taught you to hold the owner accountable, you know what I mean? And I think Steve Bisciotti's been held accountable around here for the good, the bad, the ugly. I mean, we talked about the afterglow of parades around here. Bernard Bokenyi joining us here. He is my longtime Clevelander pal. He lives, and that's not the bar in Miami, that's the city in the Midwest. He lives out in Portland, Oregon. He has been a Browns and a Cleveland fan all of his life. He was my sporting news producer many years ago at the turn of the century. We have remained friends, and you can certainly follow his astute observations and keen sense of humor at Bernard Bokenyi. That's Bokenyi out on Twitter. This portion of our WNST programming brought to you by our friends at Costas Inn. Good enough for the Today Show and my mom. Fat crabs, cold beer, and they got that pit beef over there that's outstanding, getting you ready for the holidays. They do ship those crab cakes. The legend continues. Find them at CostasInn.com. Also, King Discount Liquors, lottery, beer, booze, and the best prices in Baltimore. Get on over to Rosedale and give the King a ring. I got to stock up on some Malbec and some craft beer. I'm going to get me some stout for the holiday, maybe some chocolate stout or something good around here to pair with my post-holiday trimmings. Bernard Bokenyi is here. He is my friend from Cleveland. It's Browns Week. Before I get back onto the Browns here, and I've heard you out on Haslam, and I'll get to Myles Garrett and Sashi Brown and all the rest of that stuff. So observations on Steelers-Ravens on Sunday night. I know when you are a Browns fan and you're a football fan the way you are, you do watch your team. It was kind of like being an Orioles fan for 10 years. Yeah, you'd put the Orioles on, but you'd always be keeping an eye on the Yankees and the Red Sox because you knew they'd be playing in October. In the case of the Steelers and the Ravens, I know you can't turn your head from it on a Sunday night out there on the West Coast, Bernard, but that was a hell of a football game on Sunday night, and I say that, and it was the first time I've been angry after a game. I took the elevator down. I said to Luke, it's nice to know that at my age, after having been through all of this, that I can care enough to be as angry as I was after the game on Sunday night, because I was. And I look at the Steelers and I look at Roethlisberger and I say, just a little more pressure, just a little more pass rush, just one more cover, just one more chance. And the Steelers, to me, have something special going on this year, and I know the Shazier thing's out there as well, but Roethlisberger, to me, it feels like seeing him in the Cincinnati game last week, seeing him Sunday night firsthand, it feels like he kind of smells this sort of last opportunity, and you can't hate him too much. He went to school in Ohio, Bernard.
Yeah, I think, look, the Steelers, it comes down to one simple fact. They're going to trot out the best player on the field every week in Antonio Brown. I mean, the guy is just unstoppable, Nestor. I mean, against the Ravens this past Sunday, 213 yards. I mean, he clearly shows every time he's on the field, he's the best player. And Roethlisberger, you hit on an interesting point. Is this that last opportunity? You know, he was one of those three guys that came in the 2004 draft class, obviously with Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers. We've seen what's happened with Eli this year in New York, and who knows if he's going to continue playing. Phillip Rivers still performing well, but the Chargers franchise has kind of been in interesting times with their moves. So I think Roethlisberger, yeah, you can make the case this could be his last opportunity. I mean, what Tom Brady is doing, as much as I don't like the Patriots, I respect what Tom Brady is doing. He's a freak of nature at 39 years old and still being an MVP candidate. The Steelers have got just a ton of talent, Nestor. I mean, I hate saying it. I can't stand the Steelers. But you look at Antonio Brown, the guy can catch a ball no matter where it's at. Ben Roethlisberger still is able to move around the pocket, elude pressure. You'd like to see, a better pass rush, but the guy has proven he can take a hit. The guy has proven he can move around, and he's going to buy just enough time for Antonio Brown to make a play, and that's what he does. I'll be interested to see this Patriots-Steelers game this weekend. Obviously, this just might be a precursor of the AFC title game, and I think it's going to come down to Tom Brady and Ben Roethlisberger, whoever makes more plays. And at this point, I'll flip a coin. I really don't know. I think they're both playing at a very high level. They're different types of quarterbacks. I just think when you've got Antonio Brown on the field, you're just a hard team to stop.
Dude, when you're 11-point lead in the fourth quarter and then 9-point lead with 6 minutes left, you got to win the game. I mean, especially when the game means more to you than it even means to them at this point in the season.
You do, and look, I know it was a frustrating loss for you as a Ravens fan, and I can understand and appreciate that. I guess I can look at it as these two teams playing. I look at Baltimore as a team that's, they're not going to. They're probably not going to win by a lot. They're a very methodical team. They still need some playmakers on offense. Brashard Perriman obviously didn't pan out. The identity to me of Baltimore is a physical defensive team that's going to always keep you in games and always be there, but somebody's got to step up and make a play. And I just look at that Ravens offense, and who's going to make that play? Is it Mike Wallace? Is it Collins? I don't see that. Whereas I look at the Steelers, and that's Antonio Brown. That guy's always going to make a play, no matter what. He's the difference maker. He is the kind of player that the Ravens don't have, and I think I've been searching for, really, maybe what Nestor since Jamal Lewis was running for you guys. Who?
Well, Ray Rice. Obviously that was a game changer for us when he disappeared with the left hook in the elevator. We've never really replaced that. Justin Forsett was okay in the Kubiak scheme, and but I'll say this: they have more talent than the Ravens do right now, and they should win. I would think, and I think Roethlisberger, when you don't get pressure on him, you're done. It's like Brady. That is the real story of Aaron Rodgers, of Drew Brees, of any of these guys that are, Phillip Rivers, any of these elite quarterbacks. And I would go so far as to say that's the case with Flacco. Flacco's a hell of a quarterback when he doesn't have anybody in his face and guys are actually catching the ball and there's a complimentary running game. But you look up at Roethlisberger and say, how do you go up there and allow 500 yards in passing offense? I don't even know that, and I said this late in the game. I feel like the game was sort of swept out from underneath the Ravens, but you get what you deserve when you give 500 yards of passing to Roethlisberger and you don't dirty up his uniform enough.
You have to, because when you have Brown out there, look, if you give Antonio Brown 5 seconds, he's going to find a way to get open. There's no defensive back in the NFL, not Patrick Peterson, nobody that can cover Antonio Brown for 5-6 seconds. It's utterly impossible. So as a defensive coach, you have to know that, and you have to say, well, if Brown's going to get open, we have to get to Roethlisberger, period. You're right. Look, I was a huge Peyton Manning fan, and you watched the times that Peyton Manning looked lackluster. It was when he was pressured, and that's the bottom line. And if you can't get to Roethlisberger early and often and pressure him, you're not beating the Steelers. And it's the same with the Patriots and Tom Brady. Tom Brady, if you give him time, and he's got weapons now with Brandon Cooks and obviously Gronk. He's got a couple of running backs who are playing. The Patriots have some playmakers this year around Brady, I think better than they've had historically. So, look, if you don't pressure the quarterback, you're not winning. And that's why, by the way, the Ravens are going to win easily this Sunday in Cleveland, just so you know, because the Browns' defense is absolutely inept. So, I think Flacco will be on his feet quite a bit this Sunday.
All right, he is Bernard Bokenyi. He is my longtime friend and former producer at Sporting News Radio out in Chicago, Illinois. He claims Cleveland is home, but lives now in Portland, Oregon. I want to ask you this on the Steelers side of things and on the AFC side of things. Do you expect the Ravens to be back in Pittsburgh in week 2, week 3, whenever it would be? Do you see the Ravens as a survivor going into this tournament and winning a game or two?
I would say, just as a football fan, Nestor, if the Ravens do make the playoffs, I don't see them winning a game.
Fair enough.
I just look. My hatred towards Baltimore is done. Okay, the whole 95.
I've given up the Indianapolis thing. It feels cleansing when you let it go a little bit.
Yeah,
especially as you get older, it is heavy to carry all that angst around. I did it for Bob Irsay for a long time.
I'll say this. I look at the AFC right now, and I don't know that anybody wants to play Jacksonville, and who would have thought we'd be saying that? Blake Bortles, while still a little frustrating at times, he's making enough plays. They've got the running back at Fournette. That Jacksonville defense, you guys know about a good defense. That's how you won your Super Bowls. This Jacksonville defense is legit, and I think they're a team that I would not sleep on at all. Kansas City, while they've stumbled quite a bit the second half. If you watched their game against Oakland this past Sunday, you finally saw a little bit of life offensively. They have a lot of talent on that Kansas City roster, and they've got a great coach in Andy Reid. And I look at those teams as the type of teams that Baltimore is going to have to beat early on, and they're going to have to do it on the road if you do make it in. And I don't see you going into Kansas City, Arrowhead, being able to beat the Chiefs. And even though Jacksonville doesn't exactly have a home field advantage and a very devout fan base necessarily, I just been watching that Jacksonville defense. I mean, they're ball hawks all over that field with Fowler. They're a good young team, and I just look at Baltimore and I say offensively, who's going to make a play, who's going to step up, and I can point to Jacksonville and say that's going to be Leonard Fournette. I don't see that with Baltimore right now. Flacco doesn't get the respect he deserves, but Mike Wallace doesn't scare me. Whereas I can look at the Chiefs and say, okay, Travis Kelce, their tight end, you're not stopping Travis Kelce. That guy can make a play.
Yeah, the Ravens don't have anything that's going to dominate. In the way that Antonio Brown dominated, in the way that Gronkowski can take over a game, in the way that all the guys. I mean, we've seen Des Bryant take over games. We've seen Odell Beckham. Those kinds of wide receivers that can put up 11 for 213 the way Antonio Brown did on Sunday night. The Ravens don't have that threat. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and I think until that's addressed, I think the Ravens are always going to be a respectable team, and they're always going to be competitive and be right in the mix for the playoffs. I think until you can get that playmaker, and Ozzy's tried, and it's not easy. But
we learned with Brashad Perryman and Mark Clayton and Travis Taylor. I mean, we've been down that road before with our Josh Gordons, right?
Exactly. I mean, hey, it's worse for the Browns because we get Josh Gordon once every 4 years and are reminded that when he steps on the field, he's the most talented player. It's just
that does worry me for Sunday because I know how good he is, and I know the Ravens have struggled with that, and no Jimmy Smith right now, and more pressure on Humphrey, and certainly Carr was tested all night long on Sunday night by Roethlisberger to the tune of 66 passes and 44 completions for 506 yards. I am a little concerned that Gordon may be the best player on the field at times on Sunday. That does. Now, I mean, there needs to be pressure on DeShone Kizer. He needs to deliver the ball, but Gordon has shown himself when he plays. There's a reason the Cleveland media talks about him coming back all the time because he does create a difference in the game.
Yeah, Josh Gordon is in the level of Odell Beckham and Julio Jones. That when he steps in Antonio Brown, when he steps in the field, he's by far the most talented player on the field. For those not following Josh Gordon's story, know much about him. He has spent the last 3 years away from the league, various suspensions, trying to get his life in order through rehab. He's been very open about a real bad, debilitating disease he's had of drug and alcohol dependency. Now, first off, I wish the kid the best. His life is more important than football. He's finally back on the field the last 2 weeks after 3 years of suspensions. As a fan, Nestor, quite honestly, I don't even count on him to be on the field this Sunday because I don't know what can happen.
You never know what's going to happen while you're asleep, right?
He was already spotted, Nestor, about a month ago at a Cleveland restaurant. Now, this might be me making a big deal of something, but a Cleveland restaurant that turns into much more of a bar than a restaurant after hours. Now, he was just having dinner. But if you are a kid who's having issues and just getting out of rehab, maybe you don't need to go out in public where fans and with our smartphones now are going to put a spotlight on that. I hope the kid, saves his life. That's more important. But when you watch him on the field, look, he was away from the game for 3 years. In the first half against Green Bay this past Sunday, he was making catches, grabbing every single thing that comes his way. He's a ridiculous talent. This is the same guy that back in, if I remember, it was 2013, had back-to-back weeks of over 250 yards receiving. He is maybe the most purely talented wide receiver in the NFL. He might be more purely talented and God-given ability than Antonio Brown. He just can't stay on the field. And if he ever could, we're 20 years from now going to be talking about Josh Gordon as maybe the greatest wide receiver we've ever seen. He is that talented. But I will tell you, Green Bay laid a foundation for you to watch. The Packers this past Sunday really did a good job of shutting down Josh Gordon in the second half, and it was because they applied pressure to the quarterback. What we were talking about with the Steelers, DeShone Kizer's a rookie, still making rookie mistakes. He's not progressing. So the key to stopping Josh Gordon is just getting DeShone Kizer's face, and that'll be that. So you'll be fine. Ravens are going to win. Don't worry. You heard it here.
Last thing for you, and I want to have a little fun. I must say, we're all brought to you by D&L Window Tinting. 26 years of tinting everything, cars, boats, businesses. They put the shades on the sun at D&L Window Tinting. If you're riding around on a Saturday or Sunday and seeing that glare coming off the snow, you know this is the time. It is the season to get the D&L Window Tinting. They're in Parkville and White Marsh. D&L Window Tinting out on the internet as well. Also, Fremont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need Carl Delmont and our friends at Fremont Mortgage. You can find them at Fremont.com. Whether you're buying, selling, refinancing, or just thinking about it, just need some information, they're there for you, Fremont.com. All right, Bernard, many years you covered post-game locker rooms, and I have been doing this since the Baltimore Skipjacks in 1984. What year were you born, Bernard? Were you born in 84 or no?
No, yes. Oh, come on. I'm not that young. I was born in 1979, but I'm an old soul. Remember that.
79 was a good year until Willie Stargell showed up, but that's another story altogether.
Come on. We are family. Who doesn't like Sister Sledge?
Baltimore doesn't like Sister Sledge, as I remember.
Hey, I had to take a dig at you if we're going to have some fun.
I don't like Omar Moreno. I don't like his wife. I didn't like her whistle. I don't like Bert Blyleven. I don't like Kent DeColvey. Somebody in Pittsburgh in the press box on Sunday night mentioned the 79 Pirates, and I literally walked over and I said, F them. But I used all four letters when it comes to the Pirates. This is interesting for you. I've been doing this forever, and I remember the first time Chris McAllister slinked out the back door with the Ravens after blowing the game and blew off the media and didn't talk. That didn't happen a lot, and it hasn't happened a lot with the Ravens through the course of time around here, where the player after the game blows off the media because he missed the kick. And I also remember Billy Cundiff coming out and facing the music after and Lee Evans as well, sulking at his locker in Foxborough after these horrific things. But Antonio Brown, this is a new one, Bernard. I want you to hear this one because it's so unique. After the game on Sunday night, I'm in the Ravens locker room. Harbaugh is very, very short, very, very pissed off. He was just more pissed off than I was. Flacco was relatively short. Everyone was short in the locker room. And I get in the elevator, and it's going on 1 o'clock in the morning. Might have been after 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm taking the elevator up, and all the Pittsburgh guys are in the elevator. And when they told me this, I couldn't believe it. Antonio Brown caught 11 passes for 213 yards, unquestionably the star of the game, the difference maker in the game, the reason the Steelers are 11-2. And apparently, Mike Tomlin began his press conference by saying, for those of you waiting on Antonio Brown, he's getting a haircut. He'll be a while. And all of the beat writers waited until 1 o'clock in the morning, and he was still getting a haircut. I mean, I've heard of a lot of post-game disappearing acts and Cam Newton and Jameis Winston licking his fingers and, various things that happen after games. I have never heard of the star of the game being unavailable to comment because he was getting a haircut after midnight. That's a new one. I just wanted to pass that one on. Do you have any weird ones like that? I mean, do you have one that's better than that one, Bernard?
Well, I don't know that I have a disappearing act that's great. I mean, I can tell you for years of covering the Indians when I first started, Jim Thome was notoriously slow in the showers, and it was just understood you had to wait for Jim Thome. He spoke every single game, was always there, win, lose, no matter what, but he was just notoriously slow in the shower, and he would even joke about that. First off, let's consider the source in Antonio Brown, Nestor. This is the same guy. I mean, again, I was complimenting him. He's unbelievably talented, but he was pulling out his smartphone last year during the Steelers' post-game locker room in a very much private team-only moment and broadcasting on Facebook Live your pal Mike Tomlin addressing the team. I mean, consider the source. The guy's a prima donna. It's gone to his head. Yeah, you're talented, but you have an obligation. The story I could share real quick with you, Nestor, if you recall the Packers-Vikings playoff game, this would have been back in, I believe, 2003 or 2004, when Randy Moss caught a touchdown and did the fake moon to the Packers fans at Lambeau Field, and the Vikings won the game. And I walked into the Vikings locker room, and it was my first time in their locker room. I'd been covering the Packers. It was pretty much understood that you don't talk to Randy Moss, and he's not going to speak. Well, that doesn't matter to me. My job.
By the way, he's horrific on television. Having watched just the last couple of weeks, he's awful on television.
He's awful. And look, I don't have a lot of respect for the man because of what I saw this day. I went to his locker, and there were only two other local beat writers there who were brave enough to try to get his comments about why he was fake mooning the fans, and now we've learned the backstory. But when he finally came out of the shower, he was not very pleasant. I don't know that I can repeat any of the words he said to me and the others there that day about why I had the gall to stand in front of his locker. He went and cooled off. 10 minutes later, finally did speak. But look, it's unfortunate because stuff like Antonio Brown getting a haircut, for every prima donna that there is, and Nestor, you know this, there's a lot of good guys, good players in the league. There are a lot of good athletes that are hospitable. I was telling you about Jim Thome. Don't know that I've ever met a more amazingly personable, good human being than Jim Thome. And, you know, there are a lot of guys that do good things, and it's a shame when an Antonio Brown does this stuff because he gives that opportunity for us as fans to make this narrative of players having attitudes and not caring and being, you know...
Well, the Facebook Live thing was just outlandish. I mean, it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen an athlete do. Literally.
Absolutely.
Literally. I don't even know what second place would be within the confines of work. You know, punching your quarterback. I mean, that's happened now with the Geno Smith thing and all that. But I would think within the sanctity and all that is holy to football players and a coach to broadcast live when your coach is on there saying don't broadcast, don't do anything stupid on the internet is it's an all-timer really until Sunday night when he was the star of the game and was getting a haircut after the game.
And again, consider the source. And the frustration I have, Nestor, I mean, I spent 16 years in the radio industry. I was in locker rooms. I saw a lot of things. I know that there are good people in there. Every time I walked into a Green Bay Packers locker room, win, lose, or draw, I knew that William Henderson, their fullback, was going to be there and was going to be available to speak about the team. He wasn't a huge star, but he was always there. And you know when you walk into a locker room, there are going to be guys, even this past Sunday, you know, Joe Flacco wasn't happy, but he was there. He's always going to be available to the media because that's part of your responsibility as a professional athlete, and to have enough respect for the media who, you know, their job is on the line to communicate with you. And it's a shame because Antonio Brown is one of just a few people like this. I wish the narrative wasn't that people didn't get this impression that all NFL players are like that, because they're not. They're not. But, you know, look, consider the source. Antonio Brown, he's in it for him. He wants to do his commercials for, you know, DirecTV and the Soup or whatever he's doing and dancing around, and great. He's making a whole lot of money doing that. But, you know, I think at one point in his life he'll probably realize he's a pretty miserable person because, you know, after having the confrontation with Randy Moss that I did after that Packers-Vikings game, you know, he's a pretty miserable person. I saw a lot that day.
And was portrayed as such throughout his career, right? I mean, literally, he was portrayed that way on draft day, which is why he fell to the Vikings where he did, right?
Exactly, and he owes Denny Green, may he rest in peace, for saving him, or else who knows where Randy Moss would have been drafted. Again, unbelievably talented player on the field, but, you know, lacking in the integrity department.
But he never did push-ups in the driveway with Drew Rosenhaus. That's all Terrell Owens. Hey, Bernard, always a great visit with you. I'm sorry your Browns suck, but I won't be sorry on Sunday. If for some reason the Browns beat the Ravens, feel free to send me whatever, you know, damning text that you feel appropriate at the time, and I'll still love you for Christmas and send you a Christmas card, okay?
Well, thank you. And even if the Browns somehow would win, what would it mean? Oh, great, wow, 2 wins in 2 years. I could care less. The Browns are guaranteed no worse than the 4th draft pick this year. I don't care. I don't even have it in me. I can't get excited if they win a game.
Browns season begins on draft day for you, right?
Sure, why
biggest
not?
Day of the year.
Love you, Nestor.
Hey, man, see you soon. Good luck to the Cavaliers and to the Cleveland Indians. He's Bernard Bokenyi. You can find him out on Twitter at Bernard Bokenyi, Bokenyi. He's my former sporting news producer. I should have Bernard on more and just ramble. I like talking sports with Bernard. You can find him out on Twitter. He's in Portland, Oregon, out of the industry, as they say, but still watching the Browns lose and lose and lose more. Hopefully the Browns will lose this week. I am dusting off after a long, long evening on Sunday and some long days earlier in the week here after a very, very disappointing, frustrating loss by the Ravens to the Steelers at the Confluence. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from wherever you happen to be. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. If there's any breaking news, that happens first. Maybe at the baseball winter meetings. Who knows? You'll get it first on the WNST Tech Service. It's all brought to you by Coonsford of Security Boulevard. I am Nestor. I'm a very available individual. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live right here on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.